Let's start with a very interesting story from Thunderkurg. Either suck it up or leave is not the way you want to address the person who's practically carrying the office. This will be a long one, TLDR in the bottom. I worked in the service industry, well, to some extent, for about 2 years before the pandemic came. When I say to some extent, what I mean is I wasn't really serving anyone. I worked in a department called back office, or BO for short. This is where goods come and go. Our department has two jobs, to check and to input. Therefore, we called them checker and data. The checker's job is to make sure that all orders are eligible. This included quality and quantity. After a checker has confirmed the order, the data will then input the information regarding said order in the system, after which the merchandise is ours and will not be eligible for a return. Therefore, our department was extremely important. The work was stressful and, more often than not, heavily supervised. We used to have 8 people working at full capacity during the normal days and barely managed to get by. There were weeks when we had to work overtime almost every day just to get everything running in order. Because of these overtime hours, we got paid more than other departments, nearly 30 to 40%. Of course, this sparked controversy. Other supervisors argued that we're using our workload to exploit the company. Mine was having none of it. There were audits, sessions, supervision from the higher office, and they found nothing. They even tried to bring in another crew from another store that's closely related. They quit as a whole after 1 month. When we got back in control, we even requested more hours to cover the shit that they had left behind. Eventually, the store stopped trying to change us. Instead, they tried to limit our hours. We used to request 2 or 3 hours on busy days before, but then, even when the store was practically buried under mountains of goods, they only let us do 1, very rarely 2. We tolerated it at first. Normally, we would stay past the requested hours to see things done, not because we loved the job, God no, but because we're responsible workers, and if we didn't finish the work that day, there were chances we'd get consumed by the flow of goods the very next day. But it was usually 30 to 45 minutes of those extra 1 hour top. When the change happened, there are days we had to do 2 hours extra with no pay. Yes, we should have said "F it" to their faces, but my supervisor asked us to stay and he'd try to fix things. He's a super cool dude, and because I liked him very much, I agreed. The others weren't so cheerful, 3 left after a month, so we're down to 5. Our HC then was 3 checkers, 1 data, and the cool dude. Us checkers suffered, yes, but the data was on the verge of collapsing. She would be the first to enter the office, and usually the last to leave. Her shift was 8 hours, but she worked 12 or more every day. More often than not, 2 or 3 of them were unpaid. We tried to share the workload with her, but we couldn't even cover our own most of the days. His objection to the work hours came to no avail. They were aware that we deserved those hours, so they simply ignore his request and response with something general. He's pissed. It was July, and the heat should not have come from the company as well. He requested a full audit, threatening to leave if things didn't change. They basically told him to either suck it up or go home. So he just left. He's the 3rd person they've hired in 3 years to manage that office, so they thought he's just as disposable as the others. What they didn't know was, he's the only reason I and Miss Data stayed. So when we knew what happened, we immediately noticed the HR that will also be leaving. They threatened us with penalties for unlawfully terminating our contracts because we hadn't given them 2 weeks' notice. But we laughed it off and reminded them that being the special department, the BO was given an extra 3 days off each year, which totaled in 15 days. Also, our contract stated specifically that if someone quit, they could choose to either use their remaining days off and leave early or get them converted into payment. They were so surprised when they found out that we all had our days off fully intact. It's almost as if we'd been too busy to use them or something, IDK, so they couldn't do anything about it. We then left the office with everyone's eyes shooting daggers. Of course, everything plunged into chaos. Did I mention that we're the most important department in the whole chain? Because we were, and they found it out the very, very hard way. The other 2 guys managed to last a week before also leaving, citing something like total madness or absolutely out of control. After they left, the store brought in a team of 10, but they couldn't have covered half our work despite being twice in number. Honestly, I didn't care about it that much, but it's not something that flew by. There were days when their store had nothing on the shelves, so people started to go to the other store in town to shop. When they got things back to somewhat normal, it was after 5 months, and the damage had already been done. They closed last month, and the place is now rented to some small business. Not as interesting as some of these stories. I just thought about it when Cool Dude called me last week. We were still friends. I'm out of town, but we kept in touch. Apparently, after the other two guys quit, they called him and tried to get him back to work. But he's a free agent then and said he was going to charge them twice for consulting fees. Not sure if it's a thing. Also, he would only work with us, citing familiarity to the environment. And if not, then he'd do exactly as stated in the contract, which would be sitting around and ordering everyone to do their jobs. Seriously, he's supervisor. He didn't have to do anything. He helped us because we're head to toe in work and he's a cool dude. He asked if they tried to contact me after that. They never did. TLDR. Store didn't want to pay us for our much-deserved extra hours, ignored our request, and told us to take it or leave it when confronted. So we left it. Edit. Firstly, thanks to all your kind strangers for all the awards. Hope you're having a nice day. Apparently, a lot of people are going to concern about the same things, so I'll clarify it a bit. The situation was not permanent. I've worked there for 2 years. This only happened during the last 2 months of my time. Before that, every hour that we worked OT was paid for, no question asked. That's why we tried to hold on to it for so long, hoping everything would be back to the way it was. The original HC for the department was 12, but after Lunar New Year, people would quit and new people would join. This is a common thing, almost customary. Every year we had to say goodbye to some of our coworkers and welcome newcomers. No big deal. What we didn't anticipate was the pandemic. It's after the other people have left, so we're stuck with 8 for quite some time. This led to those extra hours that others claimed us exploiting the store. We weren't always OT, only during summer when the need for beverages and frozen products rose, and even then, it's only 1 or 2 weeks a month. These were also fully paid. During the normal times of the year, we only OT on Tuesday and Thursday. I won't tell you why, but it's a known thing, and was always planned ahead at the end of the last week. So it's only 4 hours per person a week. Hope that clears up some misunderstanding. Edit 2. TLDR. Edit 3. A lot of people is going to ask the same thing over and over again. So here's some more explanation. I'm in C. Overtime unpaid hours are a thing here. Corporations don't say such things out loud, but you'll never have a chance at a promotion if you don't comply. And once again, the store was very generous to us, to me, for the majority of my time there, 2 years. This incident only happened during the last 2 months, which is why we were trying to compromise at first. I figure it's just a cultural misunderstanding. I'm sure in the US or EU things would have been very different. But if you're in my area, there's a high chance you'd think that I'm just being dramatic. Almost everyone in the head office did. To those who think this isn't malicious enough, I have to agree, which is why I was thinking about it before sharing. I think the malicious part is when we're not supposed to quit, but we did anyway. Basically, we're bound to the contracts, which stated clearly that we would have to turn in a 2 weeks' notice, or else we'd face penalties for unlawful termination. A lot of bad things could happen from this, among which was a bad referral to our future employers, and there's absolutely nothing we could do about that. Yes, we could try to explain the situation, but they could refuse to listen and just simply go for more potential applicants. But, as I've explained, our contracts also consist of different terms that could nullify this agreement, which they did not see it coming. For me, it's justified enough, but I'm sorry to those who think it isn't. No, we didn't try to get our wages back. I think everyone was just happy to leave. Cool Dude especially, he was newlywed and could then spend more time with his wife. I think they were trying to have babies, but because of his workload, they agreed to not think about it in a near future. His twins will be 6 months by this July. As for me, I went there to work, so when there's no more work, I just flew back to my hometown, which is in the other half of the country, and never looked back. Then the pandemic got more serious, and I had other more important things to worry about. Looking back, we could have got it if we had pushed the matter, because every hour we worked OT was documented not only by ourselves, but by the audit who approved our requests in the first place, then got rejected by the store managers. I had a conversation with Cool Dude a while ago. He said he considered it, but decided it wasn't worth it, since there were chances he would be shunned by the industry. They gossip like old women. I worked in the back office of a store, handling vital logistics. Our team of 8 was overworked but compensated with paid overtime until new rules cut our hours without pay. Despite heavy stress, we stayed out of loyalty to our supervisor. Cool dude. When the company told him to suck it up or leave, he quit. I and our overworked data staffer left too, using our unused leave to dodge penalties. Chaos followed. The store couldn't function, customers left, and it eventually shut down. Cool Dude was later asked to return but demanded double pay and our return too. They never contacted me. Looking back, we could have fought for unpaid wages, but walking away felt like victory enough. This was a near-perfect case of malicious compliance, quiet, calculated, and deeply effective. By using unused leave days to legally exit without notice, OPs and workers crippled the store's operations, exposed management's arrogance, and caused long-term damage without breaking a single rule. The next story from Rickendra. Don't trust me enough to not micromanage me? Enjoy staying late to do my job. TLDR at the bottom. This happened at work about 10 years ago. The context. At the time of this incident, I had been working for a big box superstore for about 12 years, 5 of which as a department manager. I managed 3 areas: fresh meat, frozen seafood, and prepackaged deli and breakfast meats. I supervised 2 part-timers and 2 full-timers. I reported to 3 supervisors, ranking in order: an assistant manager, a co-manager, and then the store manager. The situation? On a particular Thursday morning, it was just I and one of my full-timers, Carl. Carl was on duty until 3 p.m., myself until 4 p.m., and no one else after. My other full-timer was on his day off. One part-timer was not available Thursat, and the other was on vacation. Coverage was thin, at best, and would continue to be that way through the weekend. Having been super light on coverage all week due to one of my guys being on vacay, the deli wall was looking a little thin. On this Thursday morning, I had to decide how best to prepare for the weekend. I knew that I would not have enough staff to commit a person to filling the deli wall on Friday or Saturday. As soon as I had finished breaking down Thursday morning's delivery with Carl, I began busting my ass to get the deli wall as full as possible before I left that day. That way, I could have my guys focus on the fresh meat wall throughout the weekend, where I knew it would be super busy. While I did this, I entrusted Carl to fill the fresh meat wall for Thursday night's 4 p.m. rush. He was a very hard worker despite his age and health. I knew he could handle it on his own. Around 11 a.m., Carl had to take his lunch break. While he is gone, my co-manager, Scott, arrives to work and sees only me, and I'm filling the deli wall while only half of the fresh meat wall had been stocked thus far. Scott does not like this. He tells my assistant manager, Brenda, to have me swap to the fresh wall as it is more important for that night's customers. I immediately seek out Scott to tell him why this is a bad idea and why I am filling deli meats and not fresh meats. But Scott doesn't care. He doesn't want to hear what I have to say. I am to do exactly as I am told. He does not want me to fill the deli wall, only the fresh wall. Did I mention that Scott is ex-military and still acts like he is enlisted? Cue the malicious compliance. I did exactly as Scott told me. After having only worked about an hour on the deli wall, I put all the freight back into the cooler and began filling the fresh wall. Carl returned from lunch, confused to see me. I explained what had happened before taking my own lunch. Upon my return, the fresh wall was nearly finished, but I went ahead and helped Carl continue filling it. Soon we were done, and just topping it off throughout the rest of the afternoon. If someone bought a pack of beef, we both went back into the cooler to bring out another. Same with chicken, pork, anything. Walking back and forth, one package at a time, until Carl left at 3 p.m., and then I left at 4 p.m. As I walked past the deli wall on my way out, it already was looking so much worse than it had when I had arrived that morning. The aftermath. When I arrived to work at 7 a.m. on Friday morning, the first thing I did was walk past the deli wall. I was completely caught off guard to see it had been filled. As I'm theorizing who could have possibly filled it, Brenda comes by and sees the puzzled look on my face. She comes over to me with a bit of a grin on her face. The following is what she had told me had happened after I left the night before. The little bit that had been on the deli wall when I had left only continued to be shopped. More and more of the wall emptied out as people shopped. It began to look like people had been panic buying. It had gotten so empty. Around 8 p.m., a market manager came in to do his own shopping. I did not explain this before, But a market manager is who my store manager reports to. In other words, someone who has even greater authority than anyone in the store. Market manager Bob goes to buy some lunch meat. Lo and behold, there is almost nothing on the shelf. He notices the entire wall is nearly bare. He is furious. Bob demands that Scott come over to the deli wall immediately. Scott runs over and gets his ass chewed. Bob orders Scott to get the wall stocked immediately. Scott only now understands the scope of his blunder. The wall is so empty that it will take a few hours to fill. And it is in this moment Scott realizes how hard he had f***ed up because he hadn't checked the schedule earlier and is now discovering that there is no one in the meat departments that evening. There is no one he can delegate this task to. Guess who ended up having to fill the deli wall? That's right, Scott had no choice but to do it. He didn't get done until midnight. Remember, he had arrived just before 11 a.m. that day, and he had to be back at 8 a.m. Friday. Also, Scott is salaried, so he got no overtime for the extra hours worked. Scott never did apologize to me for not trusting my judgment and for not listening to me, but he learned his lesson. From that day forward, he did not try to micromanage me and let me run my departments unimpeded. TLDR. Boss won't listen to me when he tells me I should be doing a different task that I've assigned to someone else so I can get other tasks done. I comply doing the easier workload. When my boss's boss comes in after I've left for the day to see my initial task incomplete, he chews out my boss and makes him stay until midnight to finish it. About 10 years ago, I was managing 3 meat departments at a big box store with limited staff. To prep for a busy weekend, I focused on stocking the deli wall while my full-timer Carl handled fresh meat. My ex-military co-manager Scott didn't trust my judgment and ordered me to switch to fresh meat, ignoring my explanation. I complied, leaving the deli wall half full. That night, the regional market manager came in, saw the empty deli section, and tore into Scott, forcing him to stock it himself, alone, until midnight. He'd worked a 13-hour day with no overtime. After that, Scott never micromanaged me again and let me handle my departments the way I knew worked best. This malicious compliance was flawless, silent, strategic, and humiliating for the micromanaging boss. OP followed orders to the letter, let his ignorance unfold naturally, and the consequences hit exactly where they should.